Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a very special episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider, alongside, as always, Brandon Crossland and Joshua Burch, and a special guest, Kobe Lambeth, will be joining us later on as well. Kobe from Grid Tonight, of course, Josh, your co-host, and from the Podium Finish, he'll be joining us for some special Indy 500 coverage, recapping a very dramatic bump day and Fast 12 and Fast 6 and all that good stuff. But first, Brandon, Josh, how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well, and it's great to be at the greatest weekend now in motorsports all year long. It's our Christmas, if you will. So we're looking forward to it, I'm sure.
I'm doing really well, thank you. I've had a great week covering the 500 as well, and all the shows on Grid Network as well. I'm paying for it a little bit with a sore throat today as well after today's practice, but I've got 3 days to recover, and then it's all go for Monaco and the 500. So I'm in good spirits.
Well, Josh, we'll talk to you much more later on with Indy 500 coverage. In the meantime, Brandon, I want to chat with you about the All-Star Race at, still can't believe I'm saying this, North Wilkesboro Speedway, so we'll get into that here in just a moment. But first and foremost, as always, I want to give a special shout-out to our Patreon supporters, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, and David. Your support means the world to us. And there we go. Sorry about that, Josh. Your support means the world to us. It allows us to continue to grow this motorsports media outlet here at Grid Network and continue to expand our on-site coverage. I'm hopeful that I'll be able to join Joe Samaniego out at Portland, barring any unforeseen circumstances here in just a couple of weeks. If you continue to support us through Patreon or through Buy Me a Coffee as well, we can do that a little bit more often throughout the year, and it'll benefit you, the viewers, as well, with more on-site coverage. But in the meantime, let's talk about North Wilkesboro. Brandon, the 2023 NASCAR All-Star Race will be remembered not just for the historic return of the Speedway, but a dominating performance by Kyle Larson. The only other driver to lead was Daniel Suarez. He led 56 laps. Only 12 cars were on the lead lap by the end of the race. Larson's performance brought back some memories, I think, of when Jeff Bodine lapped the entire field in 1994 when he won on Hoosier tires, still the last driver to lap the field in NASCAR Cup competition. But Brandon, what are your thoughts on how the All-Star race played out? We're seeing some mixed reactions from the fan base, I think, this afternoon.
Yeah, and rightfully so. It was a brutal domination there from Kyle Larson from start to finish. And you can even look at the truck race, which we're going to talk about later. It was, for the most part, really dominated by Larson as well, if you think about it. But had some stage wins in there and really took home the win all All-Star race long. We had kind of went back to the roots with even the format, and people were loving that. I was loving that too. 100 laps, caution break, 100 laps, checkered. And so we got what North Wilkesboro was going to give us, and that is for the most part, for the Cup cars anyway, it seemed to be a one-group racetrack where, you can, and Larson, the most surprising thing is he worked his way from the back all the way to the front, and he, I think he was quoted as saying something along the lines of, if he had started at the front, he may have been able to lap the field just like Jeff Bodine. So I definitely believe that. And this is not how I expected the All-Star race to play out at all. If looking at my own personal opinion, I really thought we were going to have some sort of, overtime, double overtime, the things that we're talking about all the time on here, Ben, and really thought there was going to be, it's probably what NASCAR was wanting too, some sort of drama at the end, some sort of bump and run, and drivers getting out with their gloves off, ready to go, and have some sort of magical moment for the All-Star race. Of course, that's probably the pie in the sky dream, but we got something completely different. It really was more of a throwback back to NASCAR's roots of someone going out and just punishing the field for the whole race. And that's what we got on Sunday night.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I just get so frustrated with race fans sometimes. This was such a great weekend. This was the first time in a very long time that I was genuinely so excited for a NASCAR Cup Series event. I know I've had some issues with the direction that NASCAR's product has been taking in the last several years, but this has just been an unbelievable week. And I know that the race was not a barn burner, but there are some days where the best driver and the best car will go out and put on a clinic. And that's what happened. I mean, you want to talk about a throwback to when somebody lapped the field or won by, however much of a margin it is. I mean, it just felt so refreshing to me, regardless of the fact that there wasn't a lot of on-track passing, regardless of the fact that the short track package obviously needs a lot of help. that's not on North Wilkesboro. That's on the next gen car, and that's a problem that has been known for a long time now. Really, I think ever since the Martinsville night race last year. And I think holding this race, and I understand why they held it at night for prime time and the ratings and all that. I think if the race had been held in a day, I think we might have seen a better product there as well. But
yeah,
it drives me crazy. I think the fans maybe don't know what they want necessarily. I mean, the fact that people are saying, "Oh, I can see why this track was left to rot and dead in the middle of nowhere," and this justifies all the people saying we shouldn't have brought it back. Like, this was not a North Wilkesboro problem. This was a problem with the next gen car. I know we're going to get into tire strategy here in just a moment, but people, and Brock Beard said this as well. I thought it was very on point on his post race stream last night. People sometimes say we complain too much. We lament the fact that, things aren't the way they used to be. Not a fan of the gimmicks like stage racing and overtime, not a fan of how we crown our champions with this playoff system. And people tell us, if you don't like it, then, just you can leave, you can not come back. This is how we do it now. You're being too negative. And then we get a race like last night in an unbelievable atmosphere and unbelievable weekend, like I was saying. And they're the ones that are saying that, this was a complete waste of time and we should leave it to rot for the next 27 years again. And it's just, it's mind-boggling to me that, the fans can somehow try to be on both sides of that equation and seem to get away with it.
I don't know. Like this kind of made me realize that if the fans really did have their way, we would go from traditional racing like this to stage racing and then back to traditional and then back to stage racing. People are not ever really going to find a happy medium if you just listen to the common voice that's the loudest and screaming on Twitter. I mean, this was a great return to the roots, and I think it really, I hopefully this will show someone at NASCAR that this kind of format is okay to go with in the future. And we saw some working with this with the road courses so far this year, that maybe, it might be okay to lighten up on the stages a little bit. And yeah, you certainly can't blame the domination on the track. It's the car at this point. But I also do think there is a little bit on the track side, maybe for not being repaved. I did see Denny Hamlin talking on his Actions Detrimental podcast on Dirty Mo a little bit about just his side of this opinion was just, it's time to just repave it. If you're going to bring the cup cars back and you want a good show, it needs to be repaved. I mean, even though that the history of the surface being there from the 80s, from his driver perspective, you're not going to get a good product unless you do something with the surface.
Yeah, and we'll have that discussion here a little bit later as well. But I will tell you this, because again, somebody else in Brock's live chat last night was saying that, the fans that are anti-stage racing, they've got nothing to argue now. This race proved why we need stages. And I'm thinking to myself, I will take what we saw last night. I wish we didn't have the halfway break. I wish we could have seen Kyle Larson try to lap the field. I mean, when somebody's putting on a clinic, why not just, keep the race as clean as possible if we can? And we were able to. There wasn't a whole lot of on-track incidents, in the Cup Series part of the weekend. The same can't be said for the truck race, but I think that's part of the course from a 2 series where they are right now. Jeff Gluck sent this tweet out as well, that it was so refreshing to watch a Cup Series race, and particularly an All-Star race, with minimal gimmicks, if any. I guess you still had the halfway break there at the end, but I mean, it was so refreshing to sit back as a fan and think to yourself, you know what? This isn't a barn burner. There's not too much action going on, but you are seeing a true long, drawn-out race play out naturally, and that is something we have not seen in a very long time. And when we do see it, it's, few and far between these days, especially in this era of stage racing.
I did experience that watching this. It was just, you took a moment, just a race, dare I say it, watching a race, not a constructed ending. It was organic.
Absolutely. And the weekend still unequivocally a massive success, I think, a massive win for everybody involved in the sport. Let's catch up on the chat here a little bit. Our own Joe Samaniego in the chat. Love that North Wilkesboro hosts the All-Star Race and SEMA Speedway back again. Absolutely. Adam Lemery, Hendrick Motorsports won the last race, and now the All-Star Race. Pretty cool. by the way, it was awesome to see Larry Mack and Darrell Waltrip back in the Fox booth. Yeah, how about that for a throwback as well? The original Fox booth getting back together again.
I love having Larry Mack on site.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Amber, good to see you in the chat here. If Larson did not do the truck race, do you think he dominates the All-Star race? That's a good question. I don't know. I think these two vehicles drive so different from one another that I don't know how much Larson really could have taken from that. It seemed to me like he had such a dominant car, he probably would have won the All-Star race anyway. I'm sure, it was a confidence boost for him to have those laps that he picked up in the truck race, but I'm not sure. Brandon, if you want to take this one, but I don't know that it would have made much of a difference. I think Larson probably would have run away with it regardless.
Yeah, I think they run, like you said, I think they run so differently. I don't think it would have made much of a difference. And he could have been in all the late model events too. I don't think it would have. I mean, surely it'll help him a little bit with his, memorization of what each corner feels like, but I don't know if it really played that much of a factor.
Yeah, Joe Samaniego continuing to chime in here. We didn't have any stages, overtime, or mayhem take out the best car and driver that night, pure racing. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why, again, not the most thrilling, exciting, 7-wide photo finish kind of race, that you could possibly dream of, but I still think a very solid night. And Chrome Diesel, 100%. People are overreacting too much. I think that's a very good way to put it. Seth Eves, good to see him in chat. Seth, North Wilkesboro being back means no real complaints, but just because I respect what Larson did doesn't mean I loved it per se. I like the entertainment. Sue me, call me a fake fan, think I care.
I don't think you're a fake fan, Seth. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
We respect everybody's opinion here on this show. And, as strongly as we feel about certain things, we certainly understand the side of the point of view that, it wasn't necessarily the most thrilling race. And, but at the same time, I don't think you fix that by bringing a better product to the track. And I think NASCAR knows that this short track package is certainly lacking. I don't think you fix that by throwing a fun flag out there with 10 to go and bunching the field up again, just so that Kyle Larson can probably go drive off and still win the race anyway. But that's just me.
Year 2 in a new car, there's always going to be a weak link. And unfortunately, it's short tracks at the moment. Yeah.
Amber, better than Texas and Bristol All-Star races. Well, again, I think when you judge from last year's All-Star race, very low bar to clear. So that's certainly, I think North Wilkesboro certainly achieved that. And I would say better than Bristol as well. I know
it beat Bristol too.
But, I think the amount of attention and hype surrounding this weekend, I think certainly a better experience. And Adam agrees with that as well. Seth, back in the chat, I'm sick of the words gimmick and organic. Give me a break, Crossland, and stop talking down to people that like entertainment. Well, Seth, I think it's all about finding that balance. I think there needs to be a balance between pure organic racing, but also recognizing that we're in the entertainment business and still making sure that not every race is a complete snooze fest. So I will grant you that there is certainly a balance that needs to be made there. And
I like entertainment too. I do.
Yeah, I think like we mentioned, the short track product definitely needs work, and we can acknowledge that. And Amber, back to Bristol again. Bristol was a big letdown, and the light gimmick too for the car. So you guys remember that? The underglow? You remember how awesome Kurt Busch's burnout was, and everybody was excited to see that kind of underglow in the All-Star race, and then we just got these little lights on the rear end of the cars.
Yeah, I was there for the burnouts on Broadway, and those were really good neon lights there. But the All-Star race, it was like, what happened? Somebody put a flashlight under the car. Yeah,
and Seth says all good in the chat here. Yeah, Seth, I know we're just having some fun here on this Monday evening here on Grid Network. All good on our end as well. Chrome Diesel, good to see him in chat. Chrome, when Larson has luck and speed on his side, he's dangerous to the competition. I don't think he needed too much luck. I think he just flat out drove away. And like we said, probably could have lapped the field if he'd been given the opportunity. And an absolute clinic by Kyle Larson in the All-Star race last night. But we do have a little bit more to talk about. And obviously, like we've been mentioning, not too much action going on all throughout the pack. Now, our own Joe Samaniego was mentioning in our group chat, Brennan, that he was a little bit surprised there wasn't more variation in the tire strategy. Suarez still had 2 sets of fresh tires at the end of the race. Bubba Wallace had 1. Of course, had you change tires under green, you probably lose 2 laps with how short North Wilkesboro is, even if you have a perfect pit stop. You can work to the front like Kyle Larson did, or force all the others to pit for new tires if you've got that much of a pace advantage. However, if a caution comes out and you're a lap down, you're trapped and your race is likely over, at least in terms of going for the win. So with all that in mind, Brandon, did the halfway caution limit the strategy for everyone? And are you surprised nobody was willing to take a little bit more of a risk in the second half of the race?
Yeah, it's kind of what I was thinking while we are talking about the halfway caution break. Like, it really makes me wish that it wasn't there, so we would get some green flag stops and force some of these teams. If you're going to give them enough tire sets of sticker tires, why not let the strategy play out and force them to get off the track and make green flag stops? I think that would have ended up giving you a caution, and maybe Seth, we would have got some of that or entertainment, coming out naturally through the race. I am surprised that no one was really willing to take a risk, but I know that I know that feeling though. I understand that if you pit and then all of a sudden yellow comes out, you're done for. So there was definitely it seems just enough crew chiefs thinking that it wasn't worth taking the risk.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think it was worth the risk. I understand that in hindsight, you can look back at what you did do and realize that you came up short, and maybe you could say you might as well try something a little bit different. But I think the risk of pitting under green, even given the tire advantage, I can certainly understand why crew chiefs would be hesitant to do that. And again, I've got to say I was surprised that we didn't really see any major incidents. I thought, with $1 million on the line, you'd see somebody laid out there and push it over the edge a little bit too far, and we'd get a late race restart at some point. But that's the opposite of what happened. It was a clean race all the way through to the end, and that allowed Kyle Larson to just drive off and enjoy an easy victory. Now, after the race, Marcus Smith said at the media center that there is a spot for North Wilkesboro in the modern NASCAR world. He didn't get into the specifics, whether or not he's talking about the All-Star Race, a Cup Points race, or other series like trucks, modifieds, and late models. He did, however, say he would hold off on the repaving for now. So, Brandon, I know you were bringing that up just a few minutes ago. Considering the serious money that's being put into North Wilkesboro, what should we expect for the future of a track and NASCAR's role in that?
The way I interpreted that interview, Ben, was I think Marcus Smith is going to plead with NASCAR to next year keep it exactly how it is this year. And I'm trying not to set my expectations too high, but I'm trying to be realistic with what that might mean. I definitely think the Cars Tour and ASA is coming back for sure, but that's not NASCAR world, what he's talking about. So I think I really think they'll introduce the modifieds. The trucks will come back for a points paying race, and then we'll have the North Wilkesboro All-Star Race again, and hopefully we'll get some variation in this experiment to see whether a points paying race is viable or if maybe it just needs to be limited to the trucks. Who knows? But we do know they put a lot of money into it, so certainly they've got some sort of long-term plan under their sleeves that they're not going to tell us, of course. But it's good to know that they're already thinking about this and that we can get such a detailed answer from Marcus just the night after the event.
Yeah, you don't pour all this money into the track without expecting that it's going to be more than just a one-time deal. So, whether you get a repave or not, and I can certainly see an argument for repaving it. I can also see the argument for trying to get as much life out of the original surface as possible. But I think at some point it's going to be inevitable here, especially if you're talking about a long-term future of this track. I think it needs to be considered not too distant future at the very least.
My plea, though, is when they do repave it, and they do need to repave it soon, in my opinion, please spend the money. Don't be afraid to spend the money on making it exactly indeed. Don't do progressive banking. Don't try anything. Please don't mess it up like Atlanta. Just leave it alone. Make it North Wilkesboro with new paint. That's all I'm asking.
God help us all if we get pack racing in North Wilkesboro.
You can't do that. They'd be sideways.
That would be something else, wouldn't it? Let's catch up on the chat once again here before we bring Josh back in. Seth says short track package needs a lot of work. Absolutely. Outside of Hail Melon, not a lot of great moments so far. Of course, it's only been about a year and a half, but totally agree with you there. I think nobody is arguing that the short track package is perfect as it is. We definitely need some work.
To their credit, I don't think it's as bad as last year. I think we are improving. It's just not there. That's
fair. Yeah, absolutely. Seth also asks, you reckon the fact that nobody had any recent notes to go off of had crews puzzled? I think absolutely. Nobody I guess if Jeff Gordon had been willing to get back out there for a one-off, he would have had some notes. But even then, I don't know how relevant those notes would have been. It's been so long.
Did the fuel tanks hold the same amount as 96?
I doubt it. I'm sure with next gen carburetors, some sort of variation pretty much everywhere. So, yeah, I think that, everybody, it was basically a level playing field, except I guess the guys that ran the truck race and the Cars Tour races, to be fair, having some laps on the surface, maybe even if it's just in your mind that it's a confidence boost, sometimes that can translate. But I think it was pretty much a level playing field for everybody. And again, yeah, 110% without a shadow of a doubt, cannot give up on North Wilkesboro. Yes, absolutely. Can we make that 110% clear? This is a car problem, not a track problem. The Cars Tour racing was great. The Truck Series was great. The Cup Series, we know the package needs work. That's true at Martinsville as well. I don't see anybody giving up on Martinsville and saying we need to axe Martinsville from the schedule. I think we all know it's a car problem. And
on this same note, Rockingham, I see you putting that pavement on there. I'm thinking about you, hoping you get a chance too. But I don't know. Also Fairgrounds. So those are the projects out there.
Maybe Nazareth too. Who knows?
And Nazareth, yeah. Never say never.
Never say never. But I think that's probably wishful thinking. But
that would take.
I thought North Wilkesboro was wishful thinking. Here we are. So who knows?
Nazareth would take the Andretti estate.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the guy that bought the land 8 years ago, he clearly hasn't been too eager to do anything with it. So who knows what's going to happen. But let's not get too sidetracked here. A few more comments to catch up on, and then we'll bring Josh back. What we saw last night, Chrome Diesel says we can't compare to normal points race. Like the length isn't normal. Only the winner takes a check. We didn't have a full 40-car grid. Absolutely. I think
true.
If you'd had a points race in a day, you might still not have seen a barn burner. You might still have seen Kyle Larson drive away and be dominant. But I think there would have been more action throughout the field. It probably would have been a better race. So the fact that it was a shorter field held at night, I think that those two things certainly didn't help matters. Seth asked Bristol how progressive banking works. Yeah, I think a lot of people prefer the old Bristol. Rockingham next for proper management, please. There you go, Brandon. Who knows what the future holds for some of these older tracks, like we said. And Joe's still in the chat here. Good to see you, Joe. I support a repave. Be smart if they auction off parts of the original pavement to fans. I would think they would absolutely do that. I've got a piece of the original Daytona asphalt sitting in my collection, as well as a piece I picked up when I went to I won't say trespass because, again, the land is abandoned for the most part, but I do have a piece of Nazareth in my collection as well that I picked up. Yes. Yeah. I went in about 3.5 years ago.
They did the same thing for Atlanta too, I think, after they ripped that up.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Let's bring Josh back in here as well. One more comment from Seth. If North Wilkesboro and Tennessee football can come back and the Maple Leafs can win a playoff series, anything is possible. Kevin Garnett voice, absolutely. Lots going on in the sports world with the NBA and NHL playoffs as well. Lots going on in the racing world, of course, as we bring Josh back in to bring some Indy 500 coverage your way. But Josh, before we do that, I know Joe wants your opinion on something related to the North Wilkesboro discussion. Of course, North Wilkesboro and Martinsville, the only tracks from NASCAR's inaugural season back in 1949 that host a race today. If you think about Formula One, their first season with the current World Championship format was the next year in 1950. We still have Silverstone, Monaco, Spa-Francorchamps, Monza. They're all still on today's schedule from the original season there as well. But despite the historical significance, F1 continues to expand. They've said that they're willing to drop even some of the most historic races in order to make room on the calendar. Monaco's often brought up because it's mostly a procession nowadays. Silverstone's brought up when F1 conflicts with the British Drivers Racing Club. And even Spa's already been on and off the calendar a few times before. So in your opinion, how important is it for Formula One to keep some of their historic tracks, especially as we add more races on street circuits and expand the calendar, sometimes with more controversial locations like Saudi Arabia?
It's really funny this comes up now because Stefano Domenicali, who is the head and big boss of Formula One management, who own Formula One and run with it with Liberty Media as well, he was saying as well that the classics will stay. So the Silverstones, the Spas, the Monzas, the Monacos as well. At the same time he's been saying that, Silverstone is the only one that looks realistically the chance to stay. Formula One know what a goldmine they've got at the British Grand Prix. Worldwide now it is known as the best race of the season, and everybody's been excited about it for the last 3-4 years now, even during the COVID pandemic as well. we had 2 of them, and they were classics, and sort of put it on a map. And then the atmosphere you get at the British Grand Prix, it's one of their biggest selling points of the year, alongside the race at COTA as well. And they desperately tried to get Miami and now Las Vegas in to get the same amount of people in. But no, the people who go to the big events at Silverstone and COTA are the diehard fans now. So they want to keep that on. But places like Monza is even under threat, because last year there was a load of things saying that the facilities there aren't up to scratch. And let's face it, they're not as well. Monza has got woeful general admission and grandstands as well. They are severely lacking as well on accessibility as well for people who are able-bodied and people who are disabled as well. The commentary boxes and grandstands there haven't been updated since the, I think, 1960s, early 70s, and they are woefully always causing problems. Last year as well, the commentators who were in the commentary boxes, they just one of them had a bout of claustrophobia as well. It is one of the tightest commentary boxes as well. Look in front of you both, gentlemen, the size of your desks as well. That is literally the size of your commentary box you would have at Monza, and you're expected to have 3 people in there standing alongside, plus all your monitors. They're not great. So Monza's coming under, despite how great the race is, the facilities need upgrading. Looking at Spa, they've upgraded their facilities as well. They've put everything right, but it's the funding, the lack of funding that they haven't got. So they're looking like they're going to be in a rotation. Looks likely we're going to see that with the French Grand Prix at Le Castellet. It was an interesting race the last 2 times we visited there, so that's something. But the French Grand Prix, which arguably is where motorsport began in Pau, France, in 1920s as well, we haven't got a race there, and that's an historic Grand Prix, so that needs fixing. We haven't got a race in Germany as well. Either Hockenheim or the Nürburgring. We haven't had one since 2020 as well. And the German Grand Prix is one that everybody always says, because you've got 2 great tracks at the Nürburgring and the Hockenheim Ring that everybody loves. We always get a great Grand Prix there, not on the calendar due to funding. We've got now as well Monaco, which has now got a 3-year extension deal to run until the end of 2026. That's come in, but with rules and regulations around it. They've lost their early start as well, so they are no longer starting on a Thursday in order to have the fashion parade Friday evening and then Saturday, Sunday for the traditional weekend. They now conform with everyone else on the calendar with running on a Friday. The reason we haven't seen Formula 3 run there as well in the past is because it was part of Monaco's contract that a Euro Alpine series would run there. So that's why we saw the Formula Renault 3.5 series run there for so many years. That series folded. It was replaced by the Euro Cup Championship as well. But under the new deal, it now brings it in line with more Central European races. So Formula 3 returns this year for the first time, alongside Formula 2 and Formula 1, per the regulations. Tele Monte Carlo, who, as we all know as well, was the bane of our lives at the end of May for television coverage, which frankly is, I could do better with an iPhone standing at Saint-Devote than they could to miss Vettel and Gasly's thing a couple of years ago and put it on Stroll. So
shots fired.
Yeah, they've gone. Formula One now this weekend are producing the coverage themselves, which is going to give a whole new feel to Monaco. We're going to see a lot more of the action, because people always complain, oh, Monaco's dull, nothing ever happens. That's because we miss around about 90% of what actually happens in the Monaco Grand Prix.
Wow.
So I'm expecting to see a great weekend, and Monaco changed the minds of people. It's also going to rain, which is always beneficial for Monaco because it just makes it completely unbelievable. But the biggest problem with the classic circuits isn't to do with the fact that you can't overtake with them. It's the fact that the cars are too big for them, because they have grown so big now as well. Yeah, they're big and they're long. So the width and the height is too much. So we need to slim the cars down, and then we can race at these circuits more often. I'm sort of glad that we didn't have a race this weekend. It was obviously understandable to have Emilia Romagna cancelled, but I'm also glad because there's too many races on the calendar. it's getting to the point where you don't want to race. And I find it so annoying as well. It's a European race that got cancelled at a classic circuit of Imola. And I don't like racing in Jeddah. It always frightens me, the track as well. There's a couple on there that I don't like when we come around to it. Miami, I was sort of excited for, and then was reminded very quickly why it's not a good idea to race there. And I just think F1 at the moment are going for these glitzy and glamoury venues in places that just cannot host Formula One races. It is ludicrous to think that it's possible. Vegas, I'm still very much looking forward to. I'm going there with an open mind because it does look quite interesting. But I think as I said all year, we're going in towards a war between Formula One, the FIA, and the teams and the drivers over what the direction of the sport is. And it's going to be ugly. And it's the fight as well. This classic circuits as well. It's a small iceberg, and it's bullets being fired across in this war as well. So I think Monaco was sort of the linchpin as to where the classic stands. So it's very timely that question gets brought up, because so much has been happening behind the scenes about where the DNA and the spirit of Formula One is. And you're probably going to hear it talked about a lot over this weekend with the Monaco Grand Prix as well, because of all the changes that you're going to see. The only positive thing I'm taking to this weekend is that, from what I understand, we're going to get a new start position for the camera at Monaco. So no more looking at the top two from about 50 meters back with a big advertising banner across. You're going to get a sideways shot straight down the grid with the lights, and you can see everybody making a good start, and not just the top two at the front of the grid slowly pulling towards you. So there's going to be some differences. So yeah, that's basically it with classic tracks.
You were talking about archaic commentary areas at Monza. I was thinking I can do you some better, some worse ones in the high school play-by-play world. I have some pictures of different places I could show you where it's probably a lot worse.
I don't doubt that as well. I think everything needs a good upgrade, doesn't it? I mean, the worst commentary boxes are the ones in Hungary. They have no, genuinely, I'm not even lying here. This is bona fide truth, and you can trust me. I've never lied to anybody on here. The commentary boxes in Hungary are the worst in the world. The windows have never been cleaned since 1986. They've never been cleaned. The commentary boxes also are right above a food court, and you can smell it. It stinks. Also, it attracts bugs, and it attracts wasps. And in the commentary boxes, in about half of them, there are giant wasps' nests. And when it rains, as you know it does at Hungaroring, the commentary boxes flood. So, yeah, not great. You thought Imola was bad. Imola's actually got pretty messy boxes as well, actually. But no, Hungary's is the worst. You go.
Sorry. Yeah. There you go. Sorry, Josh. I didn't want to interrupt because you were going on, and it was a great monologue there. But I still remember going to Sellersville last year for the F1 on NBC reunion, and David Hobbs was talking about how in the 70s the Talladega booth was absolutely terrible because of how that track was rushed to be put together, and the suites were absolute bare bones, and he and Ken Squire were tucked in really tight. So those things are certainly important to keep up with in terms of upgrades and making sure everybody's comfortable. And while we have a moment, while we're sort of talking F1 here, just want to send our best wishes to everybody in Imola right now dealing with the flooding and everything. Certainly wish the best for everybody. I know we were supposed to have some F3 and F2 races to talk about tonight. Of course, those got canceled along with the entire weekend, so certainly sending our best to everybody affected by the flooding out there. In the meantime, let's get caught up on the chat real quick before we go into the Indy 500. Seth says, for me, the Monaco debate may be the finest line I have trouble crossing. Processional and hard to pass, yes. But can you really take it off the F1 schedule? One of the crown jewels, arguably the crown jewel. I would say I'm with you guys. I think it's got to stay. And we just need to figure out how we can improve the product rather than giving up on it.
When Joe Schmo in America thinks about Formula One, he thinks Monaco. I mean, you can't take it away.
No.
It's a no.
3 ways to improve Monaco. 1, change qualifying into an Indy 500 style shootout where we can run all day to get the excitement up. 2, change the track, extend the corners. I saw on Twitter as well, instead of turning, after the Lowe's hairpin, you come into the two portiers as well down the hill before the tunnel. If you turn left, you get, I know I'm putting right, but to my left, if you turn left, you can swing round a big roundabout as well, which is a perfect opportunity for an overtake because it's a long sweeping corner that gives you such a straight line fast run out the tunnel, which gives you an overtaking spot into the Nouvelle chicane. And while at it, change Nouvelle a little bit, give it a bit more easier to get up the inside. Monaco could be made great if they would just get off their backsides and actually move some of the barriers into a bit easier position to actually get in, because you've all seen it, the Nouvelle chicane, literally it's like barrier. Oh, it's opened up for a corner now. And it's literally just like the finest detail. If you smooth the barrier out, you create an opportunity to overtake. If you change the angle of the chicane as well, you can move it round. You can't move the chicane up or down the straight because Tabac is so fast. So keep Tabac as it is. The swimming pool chicane's fine, but then you've got that tight little left-right chicane as well before Rascasse. That needs to be opened up a little bit more as well to allow some overtaking as well into Rascasse. Rascasse can be made wider, and then instead of going into Anthony Nogues, if you go up towards the medical centre, it swings back around and on another little side road as well to add a couple more corners for a left onto the start-finish straight again. So you don't lose any corners. You actually gain some overtaking opportunities of the track. So Monaco could be made better. And it's not like, oh, well, you're destroying the heritage of the track. The track has been changed thousands. We used to have a gas station hairpin, for God's sake, as the start-finish line. And that got changed into Rascasse. And then Rascasse got changed in 2003. Portier is no longer Portier because there's now several skylines been put up as well alongside it because of the land work they've done. There is plenty of room to change Monaco. So you want it on the calendar, you change it. And to be honest with you guys, bit of an overshare, but I've always had dreams and I was convinced myself that they tested something in Monaco in 2014. You know, like how when you have a dream about something and you're absolutely convinced it happened. In one of my dreams, I was convinced they changed something at Monaco. And it's always been a thing with me as well, that they changed a corner at Monaco. It's like a long sweeping hairpin. And I can't place it in my mind where it is, but I know it must have happened. So I don't know where that was. But even in my dreams, I'm thinking of how can we make this race better? How can we get more excitement in it? Change the layout. Just make it better. It's so simple.
We used to set up hay bales and let them run off into the bay if they missed it. I mean, anything's possible. We can change it up.
I'm remembering Ascari diving off in his car as well into the marina itself as well. And Frogman was standing by to get him out of the wreckage. And he was taken to hospital, to quote the announcer, with a severe cut. With a light cut and severe shaking. And he went swimming in it as well. Then, sadly, a few days later, he was killed at Monza. But that's the thing. One day you're diving into the ocean at Monaco, and the next you're crashing at Monza. It's a weird world, but it's history. It's part of the history of the sport to have these type of circuits on the calendar. We can't lose them. You just got to move with the times and make them better, make them adapt to the new surroundings.
Absolutely. Let's move through the chat here really quickly, and then we'll get into the Indy 500. On that note, Spa has, Joe Samiego says Spa has done a lot of upgrades recently and hopefully not on threat of losing often. I guess it means losing the date there. He also said, I miss the old Hockenheim ring, race into the forest, little downforce, and not a fan of the shorter layout. That's my thing right now. Like, how do we not have a race in Germany? You think of all the German greats that we've had in recent years in this sport, Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, Nico Rosberg, world champions, everywhere you look. And I think at one point, I think in 2011, there were 7 German drivers on the grid. They love Formula One in Germany. There's such a great history. Mercedes, for crying out loud, the dominance that they've had in recent years. How do we not have a German Grand Prix on the schedule in 2023?
Because there's too much Aramco money. They have to get too many races in the Middle East.
Oh.
I'll tell you one thing, though, on that old Hockenheim ring, I too miss it. I was only talking about it the other day in the Indy 500 practice. I really miss the old Hockenheim ring. And it kills me that every time we go there and see an image of it, you can still see the old layout etched out in the trees as well. And I was like, why don't we have that? Because they built this new shorter layout to add more grandstand seats. Well, here's a thing that genius didn't think of. Herman Tilke, as usual. He could have the old layout, but with the new sections added in, because it doesn't change anything. Where they put the grandstands on the new layout, you literally can still have the old layout with the new section. It doesn't change a thing, because where the old straight comes out, it's straight after the hairpin. Keep the grandstands with the fancy little infield section as well that they've got, and nothing changes. So the best of both worlds. Honestly, I had a chance to speak to him in Tilka, and I was passing through, and I didn't know if it was him or not, but it was. So I didn't talk to him. But if I would have, like change this, do this, do that. Just do it, because it's so annoying. And we need a podcast on classic circuits as well. That's what we need.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to continue on to everything that we could talk about here on this topic, because it's certainly a rich discussion that we could have. But a couple final comments here. Seth says F1 not being in Germany would be like NASCAR not being in the Carolinas and Tennessee. Chrome Diesel, our last comment, and then we'll bring Kobe in here. F1 needs to return to Watkins Glen. Mm-hmm. I'm going to caution you on that and be careful what you wish for, because F1 in 2023 is not what it was 50 years ago. The amount of upgrades that would need to be brought to Watkins Glen to bring it up to grade 1 classification, and the fact that it's in a more remote area of New York. I think if you wanted to bring Formula One back, you could, but Watkins Glen would be absolutely unrecognizable, and you would be lamenting what you've lost of a NASCAR. And if they were ever to go back the IndyCar side of things, IMSA side of things, I don't know if that would be worth it, especially now that we have 3 races here in America already.
Controversial, but in my opinion, they've already butchered Watkins Glen to get it back for IndyCar, NASCAR, and everything as well. It's not the track I once recognized it as. It's too much shiny.
Yeah, and paving over, I mean,
it's not a farm anymore.
I feel like natural track limits are the best track limits, and it does look kind of ridiculous when you see the NASCAR drivers, running so far wide that they're,
off the track.
It's like the Spa start-finish straight, the bus stop chicane. It's not bus stop chicane anymore. The reason it was called bus stop chicane because it was an actual bus stop. It was Spa's a street course that just got turned in over time to a permanent circuit. The bus stop used to actually be a cool little track. And again, like with the old Hockenheimring, the one thing that really annoys me is the fact that you can have the bus stop. It was just a change that Herman Tilke did, because you then get a straight line start finish straight. But you can have the bus stop and a straight line start finish straight. And also that annoys me as well. I really miss the old Spa, that layout as well. Not the old Spa, but the old Spa. But there's so much. Okay, boys, that's a show that we're going to have to do over the summer break. Classic tracks that we would fix. There we go. That's something that we can do.
I'll write it down.
Good roundtable. Let's get on it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hard to believe we're already coming up on almost 45 minutes here. Let's move into the IndyCar coverage and qualifying for the Indianapolis 500, and we'll bring in our friend Kobe Lambeth from Grid Tonight and the Podium Finish. Kobe, good to see you. We're going to hand some questions over to you in just a moment, but first let's run down what happened in a very dramatic bump day and front row shootout. Yesterday, qualifying for the 107th Indianapolis 500 delivered a lot of drama, once again with a big-name driver going home. 3 out of the 4 Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing Hondas participated in the last row shootout against 1 Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware Racing Honda. Christian Lundgaard solidified his spot in the big show, earning the 31st starting spot and didn't have to make another qualifying run. Stingray Rod took 32nd, but the 33rd and final spot came down to Graham Rahal and Jack Harvey. Harvey ended up making 3 qualifying attempts. The first time he wasn't fast enough and sat in 34th. The number 30 Honda made some changes and cooled the engine down, then went out on track for his second attempt while time was running low, but still was not fast enough. And to everyone's surprise, Harvey quickly went back out on track for a third and final time without cooling the engine, as Rahal sat helplessly in his number 15 Honda, unable to respond. As time expired, pulling a Hail Mary, Harvey came to the line to go 33rd quickest, bumping teammate Rahal out of the field of 33. Ironically, it was 30 years ago that Bobby Rahal, Graham's father, failed to qualify for the Indy 500, and now the same thing has happened to his son. Kobe, despite throwing everything they could at the car, are you surprised that it still wasn't enough to get Graham Rahal into the race? And how well do you think he's handled disappointment? I know you were predicting that he might be the one to get bumped.
Yeah, and I told Joe if he was giving out points for pick a winner, I should get 2 extra points because I correctly guessed the car that got bumped, and I correctly guessed the pole sitter and got a little bump day right. But I'm actually more surprised that Jack Harvey made it work. It's like one of those things, like it's like 1 in a million shot of working. When he went out for the third and final time, I was like, what is he doing? I said, this is just an attempt of desperation. There's no way Jack Harvey is going to get into this race. I even said in our group chat, goodbye, Jack Harvey, because I assumed that was it, and it was not going to happen. And then to all of our surprises, he's in the Indy 500. Yeah. I have no idea how he was able to pull that off. I'm still in this belief right now, but because you expect when the cars got to run, they need to cool the engine down and all of that. But Harvey went back out almost immediately. I still can't explain how he was able to do that, but kudos to him. Gave us another classic bump day moment. And in regards to Graham Rahal's response, I think he's handled this very well. High class. You have to tip your hat to him. He could have went online and see. I wonder what tropical island I can hide on until the Grand Prix on the streets of Detroit, and then he could just book himself a vacation and just really went and hide until it was time for the next race. But as you saw today, he was at the racetrack, still deeply integrated into Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan racing. He didn't shy away from any tough questions, continuing to answer those. And I think Graham Rahal, he handled this extremely well, and he should really be proud of himself, because I know this wasn't an easy moment as well, especially being one of the big name IndyCar drivers and driving for this Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team and all your sponsors as well.
Now, hold on, Josh. I want to get your answer on this. I do understand we have some breaking news, but I want to finish this question before we get into that, because I know you were in the commentary box with Josh T and with Matthew Owens, who I see here in the chat watching our stream as well. You guys couldn't believe it. I know Matthew was saying, you can go back out, but it's really going to be in vain because they haven't had time to cool the engine down. And despite that, he was able to find some speed and bump his way into the field. What was your reaction to watching Jack Harvey make his way into the Indianapolis 500?
Well, it's been viewed over 700 times by everybody on the Grid Network channel as well, because I know you and Joe uploaded the part of the commentary. Absolutely stunned, wasn't it, as well? That was absolutely unprecedented. I came up with, I thought, on the cuff, I came up with a brilliant line of Graham Rahal, the fortunate son, and for Jack Harvey, it's hit the road, Jack, and don't you look back. Aren't we all glad he did look back? He went straight out there with less than 2 minutes to go, got the green flag after the checkered came out. He was able to complete the last run, and lap 3 faster than lap 1. And then on the last lap, to keep the average up, he just pipped him. I think it was by 7 thousandths of a second or something like that. Absolutely unbelievable. And myself, Matthew, and Josh as well calling the action. It was unprecedented. We were utterly convinced that Rahal would be in and Harvey would be bumped. The amount of problems Jack was having throughout the entirety of the day and on the previous run as well, it was unbelievable. And then now for Catherine Legg, who did qualify to have this accident as well, it's just the weekend from hell for Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing as well. You cannot pick who is going to go forward and who isn't. So I am disappointed with Graham Rahal not getting through. I'm really, really upset with that. But fingers crossed, he is going to be able to pick himself up from this. The only good thing about it is it's not double points. So effectively, he's just retired from a normal race. Not going to feel that way. Of course it's not. But the brighter side looking forward to the season is it's just one normal race points he's lost. It's the best comfort of a horrible situation, and my heart definitely goes out to him. And what an ironic statement as well it was. 30 years since Graham Rahal's father Bobby got kicked out, he does exactly the same thing. Ironic poetry. Which one wants to take the statement?
Well, I'll give Brandon a chance, and then we'll go into that. Brandon, I want to ask you specifically about Rahal's reaction and how he's handled this disappointment, because we've seen the precedent be set the last few times this has happened. James Hinchcliffe got bumped in 2018, didn't attempt to buy his way into the field, handled that with tremendous grace, as did Fernando Alonso and McLaren in 2019 when they got bumped. How do you react to how Graham Rahal has reacted to what has got to be one of the most crushing moments, probably the most crushing moment of his IndyCar Series career?
Handled it like a champ, but I mean, just still, I was absolutely gutted watching him have to do that. And of course, Marty Snyder doing the job he has to do, asking him the tough questions, not afraid to do that. Marty's experience, years and years of experience, but just not able to keep those emotions together. And it was really hard to watch on on live TV on Peacock. I'm not really sure where it was going at the time, but it was absolutely gutting to watch. And for Jack Harvey too, like even to make the 500, you still have to bump at what cost? You had to bump out your teammate. And so entire RLL team there, Bobby and everyone, was just sad. And Jack couldn't even muster a smile for being in the 500. It's so hard to watch. And I couldn't help hearing the voice of Jim McKay in my head, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. I mean, we saw all of it on full display. And unfortunately, I was there with the college program in 2019, but I had left that day on bump day because there was enough rain there in the morning time that I didn't think our services were needed for the afternoon, but sure enough, they were still going in the afternoon. So I ended up missing the brilliant Kyle Kaiser making his way into the 500 with Juncos and Fernando Alonso being bewildered and walking away. I wish I was there for that, but this definitely is right up there with it, a classic bump day moment and a reason why we need more than 33 cars every year showing up to the Indy 500. I hope we keep the car counts going up.
Yeah, no doubt. A couple chat comments, and then we'll get to the breaking news here. Matthew Owens saying, bump day at Indianapolis, the second greatest day in motorsports behind only Indianapolis 500 Sunday.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The drama never disappoints. We do have some breaking news that is a massive disappointment, however, and it comes from Stephen Wilson and Driver Reinbold Racing. Of course, if you've been following along today's coverage of Indy 500 practice, there was a crash, the first crash we really had all month when the field checked up. Then Catherine Legg crashed in the back of Stephen Wilson, sending both drivers hard into the wall. Wilson was placed onto a stretcher wearing a neck brace and taken to a local hospital for advanced imaging and further evaluation. And unfortunately, we have just in the last few minutes here received this statement on Stephen Wilson's condition. And it reads as follows: update on driver Stephen Wilson following his incident Monday with Catherine Legg during the afternoon practice session at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. At 2:11 p.m., Wilson, driving the number 24 Driver Reinbold Racing Cusick Motorsports Carekeeper Chevrolet, was struck from behind by Legg's Indy car and forced into the outside safer barrier in turn one at the 2.5-mile oval. After being transported to IU Health Methodist Hospital for further tests, it was disclosed that Wilson suffered a fracture of the 12th thoracic vertebrae and will stay overnight at the hospital for further tests and observation. Based on this type of injury, Wilson will not be allowed to compete in this Sunday's 107th Indianapolis 500-mile race. The Driver Reinbold Racing Cusick Motorsports team will have more information in due course. And again, that statement coming out just a few moments ago. Guys, very, very unfortunate news here. Brandon, I guess we'll go to you first, and we'll kind of take the third part of this segment now, given the recent news that's just broken. What's your reaction to the news that Stephen Wilson will not compete at this year's Indy 500?
Gutted for him too. I mean, Driver Reinbold, this is their one event every year, the Indianapolis 500, and Stephen Wilson, as much as I've seen of him, a class act, gentleman driver, and really loves this place. And I know he's going to be just reeling that he can't take part in this race that he's qualified for, but we certainly hope the best of recovery for him. And you can't predict things like this. It's Indy is always going to be dangerous, and this incident there, and also thankful that Marshall Pruitt is okay. I saw that as well today. That was horrifying that he was in that place at that time. So glad that we can say that Marshall Pruitt is with us today, and also that Stephen Wilson is going to be able to recover here, even though he won't be a part of the greatest spectacle in racing.
Kobe, obviously, it's tough to forget the Wilson family's tragic history with Justin being killed at Pocono 8 years ago. This is a race that I know means so much to Stephen, getting this opportunity to come out and continue honoring his brother's legacy once a year. What's your reaction to the news that unfortunately his plans will have to be put on hold for at least one more year now?
Yeah, it seems super unfortunate for this to happen to Stephen Wilson. And in my opinion, it seemed like that this is one of the best cars he's ever had at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Even when he was at Andretti Autosport, it always seemed like that he was the slowest Andretti driver there, and it just wasn't working out. But this particular seat, it seemed like he really fit into dry and rumble well, and they really had some good speed. I was looking for him to have a good race on Sunday afternoon. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case, and now that we know that Stefan is not going to be in the race, I'm sure the next thing people are going to be wondering who in the world is going to take his place. I know a lot of people are probably going to be like Graham Rahal, but pump the brakes there because it's not so simple, because Graham Rahal is a Honda driver.
Mm-hmm.
And I see behind the mic says that Graham might not have to buy his way in now, but the thing is, as I was just about to say, Graham is a Honda driver, and we don't know the manufacturer's situation there. Honda might not want him to be driving a Chevrolet powered car, so that would effectively keep Graham Rahal on the sidelines for this year's Indy 500. Who knows? We've seen stranger things. Honda might okay it just for this one race, but it's really going to come down to what the manufacturers want. But typically in situations like this, they don't want to be loaning out their manufacturer driver out to their rival. But right now, the biggest buzz certainly I've seen especially from Jennifer from the Associated Press. She says, like, right now, J.R. Hildebrand has been on site all week. He didn't have a ride for this year's Indy 500. He's driven for Dry and Rumble in this race before, so it seems like J.R. Hildebrand would be the most obvious replacement, and Casey Campbell is in the same thing right there as well. Yeah, it will make a lot of sense. And also you have Sage Karam, who's also been with this Dry and Rumble team for many years. This first year not racing with them in a long time. So I guess Karam, Hildebrand are probably your two more obvious candidates here.
2019, isn't it? The last time that they had Karam at Dry Reinbold?
I believe that might be correct. Karam might have been at the 500 since then, but yeah, they both have history of a team before as well, for sure. Josh Matthew says here in the chat, Stefan Wilson, of course, was leading the 500 5 laps ago in 2018. Absolutely gutted for him. Looked like he was going to have a great car this year. I want to ask you this question because we were going to talk about this given the nature of the accident today. Anyway, how do you weigh the risk of needing to practice in a group to get the car dialed in for the race versus playing it safe and missing out potentially on getting that important information and helping your car handle better in the slipstream, but avoiding the risk of what we've just seen here with Stefan Wilson?
Yeah, today was a really weird one. We don't usually have this practice session, wasn't it? It's been added after the qualifying, because usually we go straight into carb day at the end of the week. So I called today sort of a low carb day as well, because we've got proper carb day on Friday. So this is low carb day practice. But I was surprised to see the amount of people who were out there properly giving the tow, slipstreaming as well. But I think they were all practicing as well, fuel saving. And that's what I think caused the crash, because everyone was lifting through the corners. I'm in the commentary box, because I was commentating on the practice session, obviously, and as well. And I was looking on board with some of the miles per hour, lifting on the gas and that and lifting through the corners. They were slower. So I'm quite surprised that was the danger of pack racing, because this cannot be blamed at Catherine Legg at all. This absolutely cannot be blamed on her. This looked like the entire field lifted through one on a fuel-saving technique in pack racing, and she, who had just joined this little battle as well, was expected to go at full throttle. So she was at full throttle. Everyone else had lifted. So Stefan lifts. She hits the back of him, and round they go. It's a simple accident that shouldn't have happened. And it does run the risk. Why they do it, I don't know. Because obviously you've got to get the data to see how you run in the tow, how you run out of the tow, how are you at the back of the tow, the front of the tow, the middle, how are you when you're side by side, how can you do maneuvers left and right? We saw Herta practice a move we saw Ryan Hunter-Reay do in 2014 by going down low at the back straight into 3, touching the grass. So it's got to be done, but the risks they were taking today was frightening me a little bit as well. So I was surprised to see the crash, but not surprised at the same time, because everyone's running different strategy. It's not the race. Not everyone's going to be going full throttle. Not everyone's going to be doing the fuel saving. So it was going to happen eventually. Have they had too much practice time? I think yes. Obviously, as I said in commentary, there's no power steering. You've got to hold your muscles and hold the steering wheel at over 230 miles an hour for 500 laps. That takes strength, knowledge, and practice on what the car can do. But this year, they've had less because they've lost out on one day of practice when it got washed out. So we've seen everyone sort of gang up on the practice time, do more of these runs, And I'm surprised we didn't have this crash early, especially before qualifying. Now it's put Stefan Wilson out of the race. I knew he would be out of the race. I didn't say it because obviously why would we? But from that type of accident, I was hoping he wouldn't be injured, but I thought they had to extract him as well from the car. He was complaining of injuries as well. As I said, he was something about his foot as well. So he didn't want to get out, he didn't want to risk it as well. And now we found out it's a back problem as well. So it's the vertebrae as well, T12, which is just at the base of the spine as well. If you take a look, actually, I'll demonstrate on myself because I can stand up a little bit easier. If I take a look at where the curvature at the back is, it's right here, right at the base of the spine as well, before your coccyx area as well. So that's where you're laid in the seat. So it's the vibration feedback that's caused the problem. So it's going to take a little bit of time to heal because they do. So speedy recovery is wished for him. But it was an accident that didn't need to happen. It was everybody on different runs in pack racing in a practice session. That shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, go ahead, Kobe.
I just wanted to bring in a fact that we were talking about earlier with Sage Karam and his Indy 500 starts. Actually, up until this year, Sage Karam has been in every Indy 500, dating all the way back to 2014, and the only year he did not run for Dry and Rumble was in 2015 when he was driving for Chip Ganassi Racing and whoever the replacement driver is for Stephen Wilson and Dry and Rumble. Carb Day, when they have that short little practice session, is going to be very, very important to get them up to speed. And although it's unfortunate circumstances, this happened to Stefan, at least it happened today on a Monday rather than on Friday at Carb Day, where you're going to have a driver who has no laps on this track at all and has to go out there to start a 500 miles, cold turkey style.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but sorry, go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say one thing to reply to you, Kobe, as well, about the possibility of Graham Rahal going in, even though he's a Honda driver. If I was Honda and I was Graham Rahal trying to sell this to them if he needs to, then just say this. We have a golden opportunity here to study the Chevrolet engine at the 500. A flat-out Chevy engine. Honda are going to want that data. We all know it. So they might get a little bit of grease palm there saying, I can tell you how that engine goes and I can help you out.
And so, that is exactly why Chevrolet is going to say no.
Yeah, they're not stupid.
You guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe J.R. Hildebrand hasn't missed a 500 since 2011. He's kind of been an Indy only driver for the last decade or so now. But I believe he's got an active start streak as well as, of course, Graham Rahal for the last several years. So a lot of active start streaks on the line. It looks like one of them we would think is going to be saved here. I would think that those are your three most obvious replacement candidates. I don't see somebody kind of coming out of left field here like a Ryan Briscoe or I don't know. I think
NBC. He'll be both.
Hinch and Townsend Bell I think have enough duties this weekend at IMS. I don't know, but they would be willing to get back in the driver's seat at this point. But you never know. We'll find out soon enough, I'm sure. Decision doesn't have to be made tonight, although it does have to be made soon. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of speculation. But of course, the most important thing right now, thankful that
Fernando's on his way.
Fernando,
all of a sudden, a wild Danica Patrick appears.
Oh God, she's there as well.
Yeah, I think he's going to be happy doing the NBC stuff. I don't see that happening either. But of course, most important thing, get well soon, Stephen Wilson. We're certainly hoping for the best for you. And very, very unfortunate news coming across us just a few minutes ago. Again, if you're just joining us, Brian Reinbold announcing that he will not be in the Indianapolis 500 due to the injury sustained earlier this afternoon. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, Pippa Mann. Now she's a shout.
That could be, I don't know where she is right now, how quickly she could get over to IMS. Where she's on track this weekend. But yeah, that's a good name that we haven't seen in a while. Who knows? All sorts of options here.
I'm trying to think about who could possibly fill the seat, and it's a bit crazy, isn't it? We need like a roulette. Let's start a poll or something or other. Get that doing. But get it ready for our pre-race show on Sunday. I can think about that.
All right. Well, before we wrap up here, we did have some action going on at the front of the grid as well. Let's make sure we don't totally ignore that here as we wrap up this segment. So after the last row shootout, of course, the Firestone Fast Six went for the pole. Last year, Chip Ganassi driver sat on pole with the fastest 4-lap average in history of the 500 for a pole run. This year, it was a different Ganassi driver, Alex Palou, breaking Scott Dixon's record. He will lead the field of 33 to green with a 4-lap average of 234.217 miles per hour, beating the pole speed, of course, set by his teammate last year. Palou starts on the inside of row 1. Rinus VeeKay will take the middle, and Felix Rosenqvist will get the outside. Then row 2 will have Santino Ferrucci in an epic drive for AJ Foyt Racing. Those teams certainly punching above their weight, I think, this month of May. Pato O'Ward will be in the middle, and Scott Dixon still up there in the first 2 rows. He's on the outside, starting 6th. Josh, I'll start with you. Could Palou's magical month of May end in perfection with him drinking the milk in victory lane on Sunday? And which qualifier in the first 2 rows most exceeded your expectations?
I think looking at the first 2 rows of the grid as well, we're going to see very interesting things as well, I think, from Santino Ferrucci. Really do think Ferrucci is going to be playing a big game plan as well for AJ Foyt. I think VeeKay surprised me, but that's only because his car was literally in pieces, 2 hours before qualifying? So a lot to look forward to there. Alex Palou, he's doing it all, isn't he, as well? He's got a championship, he's got wins, he's got poles, and now he's racked up his first ever win at IMS on the GMR Grand Prix. Now he's got his first ever pole position here in the 500. So yeah, I think he's got a great shot at the 500 on Sunday. Personally, my pick a winner is, who did I say? I think Rinus VeeKay I picked as well yesterday in the commentary box would win from P2 just because it looks like an underdog story for them. But really, I'd say looking at it, the top 10 have a good shout at the championship, at the 500. Throw in Will Power in that mix. Is Scott McLaughlin up to it standing that far back? Yes. Newgarden's 17th on the grid. I think this is one of the great thing about 500 miles. Nobody knows what's going to happen and nobody knows who's going to win. One name I can tell you is not going to win, though, is the guy starting in 25th position, unfortunately. Also, I think, looking forward to it, do count your bets in for AJ Foyt doing something special. It's looking like it's going to be a very good race for them. I would not be surprised if we see them fighting on the last lap.
Yeah, Palou is really he's been really strong in his just a few starts here at the 500, and I think his win is coming sooner than later to drink the milk for sure. Rosenqvist and also Tony Kanaan were really big surprises for me for the qualifying. I know Tony Kanaan wasn't a part of the Fast Six, but still for him to qualify 9th with what we think is his last year was a big story for me to see. And my pick a winner for the Indy 500, it's going to be Joseph Newgarden every year until he does it or he retires. I mean, that's just where I've been, and I think I'm crazy not to stick with that. But who has a good chance at it? I really would love an AJ Foyt story and see Santino Ferrucci win it. What a story that would be. But yeah, it's 500 miles, like Josh said. There's plenty that can happen.
Yeah, it would be really special to see AJ Foyt Racing get the win, especially with AJ on site for the Indy 500. And as we know, as AJ's gotten older, he doesn't travel to all the races anymore. And for him to be there to see one of his cars win, that would be quite a special story. And both of his cars are the ones that should surprise me the most in qualifying. Benjamin Peterson, Santino Ferrucci getting one car in the Firestone Fast Six, and both of them into the Fast 12. That's an enormous accomplishment by that program. And typically at most IndyCar races, we see them running towards the back of the field, or maybe in some races they'll be able to, one of the cars will be able to get into the midfield. But for them to go out there and show this type of speed in Indy 500 qualifying, this is a huge confidence booster for the team. And who knows what could happen in the race. We know Santino Ferrucci is really good at this track, and maybe he could make some noise and surprise some people. I know a lot of people really love an underdog story or an upset winner. Maybe I don't know what the odds are in Vegas for the Indy 500 like this week, but if I'm a betting man, I'd be willing to bet some money on Santino Ferrucci to see if he can get it done. And in regards to Alex Palou, he's had quite a special month of May, and I think he does have the car and the team behind him to pull this one off. A couple of years ago, he almost won the Indy 500 battling with Elio Castroneves there at the end. I think Palou is certainly going to be one of the favorites and pick a winner.
That's what I was thinking of there.
Yeah, no surprise to see the Ganassi cars up there, of course. I was a little surprised at how consistently strong the McLaren team was, and see other drivers out there but just missed out on the Fast Six, including Alexander Rossi, Tony Kanaan, and again, what we all expect to be his final IndyCar start in Indianapolis 500-mile race. Great to see them running strong in row 3 as well. But Kobe, I'm with you. AJ Foyt Racing. I mean, my goodness, that is a team that has not had the same level of success that AJ had in his driving career for sure. But even what they've enjoyed kind of at the start of the 2010s, having some strong runs here and there, really kind of been on the back foot the last several years. So for them to come out this strong in Indianapolis 500 qualifications, I think they're here to send a message that they're here to compete and they're here to potentially steal a win. And Santino Ferrucci starting from 4th is a fantastic, fantastic result. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what he can do on Sunday because he's got a remarkable beginning to his career at this speedway. We'll see if he can make some magic happen on Sunday. All right. Well, thank you all so much for sticking with us here. I know it's been a crazy bit of the last bit of the show here with the breaking news and everything. It's gone on quite a bit longer than I was anticipating. Kobe, thank you for sticking with us as well. Before we let you go, I want to give you the opportunity, since we didn't really have a wrap-up show this weekend. Before we let you go, what is your one shining moment from this past weekend in motorsports? I know there's no shortage of things to choose from.
Yeah, and I'm actually gonna go with 2 one shining moment. My first one shining moment has to be bump day, Jack Harvey, Graham Rahal. That was a spectacular moment, and I've actually watched that on YouTube several times now because of how awesome it was. This is, as a sports fan, this is something that you truly dream of, and an authentic moment of drama that's not manufactured at all. And I thought bump day delivered again, and this is exactly why nobody is locked into the Indy 500. You have to earn it. And Graham Rahal saw the hard way, of how things don't always go your way. I think when James Hinchcliffe got bumped several years ago, he said it best: Indy is a cruel mistress, and Indy was definitely a cruel mistress to Graham Rahal in 2023. And my second one shining moment certainly has to go to NASCAR at North Wilkesboro. Really glad to see that track come back, and I was really honored to play a small role in that this weekend behind the scenes. And just seeing a track come back from the dead like that, there's so many people to thank: Marcus Smith, SMI, Dale Earnhardt Jr., everybody who pitched in to make this all happen. And this is also a good life lesson: is that you can never dream too big. Even the impossible can be possible. It just depends on how bad you want it.
Yeah.
What started with some weed whackers in December of 2019 has turned into the NASCAR All-Star Race back at North Wilkesboro Speedway. It has truly been an incredible journey for that speedway over the last few years. An incredible weekend for NASCAR, no doubt. Kobe, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on Wednesday on Grid Tonight.
Thank you, Ben. See you guys next time. Our top story will be Shane Van Gisbergen to Project 91, and he'll make his Cup debut on the streets of Chicago. It should be fun to see what SVG can do in a stock car.
No doubt.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Kobe.
Thank you, Kobe. We'll talk to you soon.
I'll see you guys.
All right, there we go. All right.
You want to come back. And another thing.
The danger with giving all of us controls here. We're waiting for somebody to go, and then we both go at the same time, but we got that taken care of. All right. Josh, as quickly as you can, I know you said it's going to be a quick recap. We've already hit an hour 15 here. I don't want to keep folks waiting too long because I know they're here to see us continue to talk about Wilkesboro with Truck Series, and we had an ARCA East race as well. Got a lot to get to, right. But real quickly, we did have some British Touring Car Championship action this weekend. If you want to give us a rundown of those 3 races real quick.
Okay, if you want to get the graphics up, and let's see how quickly I can do this. Are you ready, everybody, to go for a quick speed run? Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so we came into race 1 as well, but Ash Sutton's already won the last 2 races in a row back from Brands Hatch. You might remember he ran round 5 and 6 of the championship, taking the championship lead. Coming into Snetterton, a brilliant qualifying session as well that was disrupted by 2 red flags. He then took over with pole position, then came in as well to win race 1. Now, there's a new tyre rule this weekend where all 3 tyre compounds, hard, medium, soft, must be used during the weekend. So in one race, you must run hard, 1 medium, 1 in the soft. So it created a different format. However, due to this being the longest track of the year, 2.96 miles as well, it's akin almost to what we see at Silverstone, it didn't provide the greatest of overtaking. Actually, this weekend was the lowest of the year. So Ash Sutton won the race by over 3 seconds. It did close down on the last lap, though, as his front tyres started to fade. So across the line, him and Jake Hill, it was 0.2 of a second. Colin Turkington taking over with the top 3. Now, move over to race 2, and guess what? Same top 3. Sutton on the medium comp compound tyre, had a great launch as well, won the race by 3 seconds as well. Hill second, Colin Turkington third. The most boring race of the entire season. Everybody started at this point to realise that there was something wrong with the touring cars. The energy deployment system just wasn't working that way. It wasn't charging up the batteries. It wasn't being deployed quickly enough as well. And because of the length of the circuit, there was too little time. Because also the length of the circuit and it being a 12-lap race, the batteries could not store as much energy for the whole race. So instead of the full 12 laps, they only had 8 laps to use it. And the ones at the front in the championship as well had less and less going into it. So the leader, Ash Sutton, only had 1 lap to run. Nobody retired from the race there as well. So it was a normal 1, 2, 3. Right. Ash Sutton gets to pick out the reverse grid pole position literally from a draw. He picked out number 6. Minimal disruption to race 3's grid. And that put Tommy Ingram as well taking the victory. Stephen Jelly, who did have pole position, dropped that to 6th after a poor start. Ash Sutton, who started 6th, got up to 4th position on the hard compounds as well. Ingram taking his first win of the year as reigning champion. Butcher fought him hard throughout the race. Race 3 was the best one of the day. Sadly, we didn't get to see much. ITV's direction was almost as bad as Tele Monte Carlo, and we couldn't keep an eye on what else going on the circuit. All in all, this weekend of the touring cars has actually been quite disappointing, very upsetting, and it's left a lot of fans thinking, well, that wasn't very good. On to Thruxton in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you for that, Josh. Great to get a recap of British touring cars as always, and I'll do the same thing before we let you go as well. What is your one shining moment from this past weekend in motorsports?
Oh, it's got to be this place, hasn't it? Got to be. I'm not even going for Alex Palou or bump day or pole position. I'm going for the whole thing. The whole week of practice and qualifying has been absolutely fantastic. As you know, I came into this week thinking, how on earth am I going to fill 8 hours a day of commentating with very little team available, very little informational graphics and everything? And boy, did it fly by. The people have been amazing. All the viewers who have flocked in to see everything as well. All the support we've all been giving everyone. The shows here on Grid Network as well. I've had a blast. I've really enjoyed this year's 500 more than any other, and we've still got Carb Day and the main race. So at the moment, flying high with this one. And boy, oh boy, let's bring it back and see we're going to have a great 500. I cannot wait.
Yeah, no doubt. Lots of great racing going on at 2 very historic tracks, and we'll have another historic track as well. 2 actually, with Monaco and the Coke 600 in Charlotte next weekend. So plenty to look forward to for race fans over the next week. Josh, thank you so much again. And likewise, we will see you Wednesday night on Grid Tonight, back again with Kobe.
Indeed. I'm looking forward to a day off tomorrow. Hey. First day at 9. So I'll see you all on Wednesday for Grid Tonight. Bye-bye, guys. Have a great rest of the show.
Take care, Josh.
I'll remove myself this time.
There we go. Let's get that figured out. All right. Well, Brandon, let's move right along here. Let's talk about the series that we actually usually cover here on this show on Grid Live Encore.
Right.
Let's talk about the truck series because unlike the Cup race, which I think a lot of people thought was a bit of a downer, the truck race, plenty of action all throughout the field. And I think, again, proof that it's not the track, it's the next-gen car. But, of course, we've already had a discussion. Let's talk about the truck series race, which fortunately for some, I suppose, unfortunately for the fans like us, featured quite a lot of Cup drivers, including the guy that won the race. Kyle Larson ended up taking the win, so he sweeps the weekend at North Wilkesboro, the first NASCAR sanctioned points-paying race win at North Wilkesboro since 1996, leading just over half of the race's 252 laps. Race did go into overtime from the 250. Larson pitted for fresh tires late in the race, but was able to charge through the field and pass Bubba Wallace after a spirited battle for the lead. Wallace would go on to finish 5th, and the 2 would go on, of course, to finish 1-2 in the All-Star race yesterday, where they were 2 of the 5 Cup regulars in the field on Saturday. So, Brandon, despite the heavy presence of Cup regulars, were you more impressed by the Truck Series on-track product than the Cup Series one?
I'll have to confess, I was a little more intrigued by the Truck Series racing product over the weekend. And that may just be because I had a little more time to actually sit down and watch the Truck Series race than the Cup Series race. I still did see a lot of the All-Star race, just not as much as I really did of the Truck Series. So I really enjoyed the battle at the end with Larson and Bubba on old tires. And somehow Bubba was able to come back in 3 and still kind of give a little more one last hurrah, I guess. But it finally did give out, and really no one was able to catch Larson after that. But you still felt like someone may be able to, but it was a good trucks and North Wilkesboro. They're not really, in my opinion, facing a we got to repave it situation, but you're gonna have to if you're gonna do the Cup Series. But they seem to be, the trucks seem to be fine there with the way it is, and I don't know if it's a weight difference or just the way they drive, but it put on some good racing, in my opinion.
Now, was it everybody that's talking about how bad the Cup Series race was and that, North Wilkesboro should have been left for dead and that there was no point in bringing it back? Tell me you didn't watch the truck race and the Cars Tour races without telling me you didn't watch the truck race and the Cars Tour races, because there was plenty of action all throughout the field. And the trucks, I thought, put on a great show and raced very well.
The ASA race was also phenomenal too. I mean, it's all fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Late models, truck series. I loved all of it. Didn't so much love the fact that we had so much of a Cup Series regular presence in the truck race. But I will say, from a racing perspective, I was very impressed with the job Bubba Wallace did on old tires, holding Kyle Larson off for as long as he did, and making things a little bit more interesting than I think a lot of us were expecting there at the end. He held him off for quite a few laps there.
Bubba Wallace had just a good weekend overall. You look at it, finished P2 in the All-Star race. He held his own and had a great truck event too. He is a Cup leacher, but he did a good job.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Bubba Wallace certainly has a lot of positive momentum to take from this weekend, and the Truck Series race certainly playing a role in that as well. Now let's move to the back of the grid here. As I mentioned, there was no shortage of on-track action all throughout the pack, but one driver who left North Wilkesboro visibly frustrated was Dean Thompson. You see him finishing second to last there, down in 35th. Thompson was taken out in an incident with Hailie Deegan and was visibly upset in his post-race interview with how he's been raced at times this season. So, Brandon, I want to ask you specifically about this one instance here. Was Deegan's entry into the corner too aggressive, or is this more just a larger symptom of the standard of racing in the Truck Series right now, or do you think it's a combination of both?
I had to think about it a little bit. I do think it's a combination of both when it comes down to it. It didn't really, from someone viewing it from a different angle, it didn't seem like it was didn't really feel like an intentional accident there from Hailie Deegan. And it looked as if one was expecting one thing and one was expecting the other. And when it came down to it, they collided into each other there into turn one. So I think it really is. This is something we talked about before, of course, on Encore. It's kind of that standard of the Truck Series, like all these rookies, all the large rookie classes that come in, and second-year drivers, third-year drivers that haven't been doing this a long time, and just some of the race etiquette that's just not quite there yet. And it's just things that have to be worked out over time, I think. And Dean Thompson has the right to be upset, but I think this is just a common symptom of the Truck Series that new drivers have to, not even just new drivers, but drivers have to get through a hard time before they go, okay, well, that's one thing I can't do.
I think one of the strongest arguments for allowing Cup drivers in these races is what we're talking about right now. These are guys that have come up through the ranks, that know how to race clean, know how to race with respect. I would prefer to see more of those guys like Johnny Sauter, your Matt Craftons of the world, your Matt DiBenedetto's of the world, who has years of Cup experience, now making a name for himself in the Truck Series and trying to continue on his NASCAR journey in this series. But,
also a great finish.
Again as well, great finish. We'll pull up the results here. Again, you can see up there in third, so a great run for him this weekend as well. But I think that the Truck Series has become a lot more developmental than it has been in, you want to throw it back to 1996, the last time the trucks were there at North Wilkesboro. I think that, that plays no small role in the kind of racing that we've seen in this series in recent years. And, I know Hailie's been very vocal at times about not appreciating how she's been raced, but, I can certainly see from Dean Thompson's perspective here. I know some Deegan fans were trying to say maybe he came down on entrance to the corner. To me, this one looked like it was primarily on Hailie. Again, I'm not in the driver's seat, so I won't, put 100% up. I don't think hardly ever you see any wrecks, 100% on one driver. I think it has to be very, very blatant, like something like we saw at Vegas last year with Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson, for something to be 100% on one driver's deal. But I certainly think no intent to completely clean Dean Thompson out there. But, I think that the aggressive nature of what we have come to expect from a truck series. I think these incidents that we see, and we certainly saw a lot of them in this truck race here with all the cautions we had, it's kind of a symptom of the culture that's presented itself with having so many young drivers and inexperienced drivers in this series.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, let's move on here. Finally tonight, one more race to recap, talking about some of the young up-and-coming drivers, no shortage of them in the ARCA Menard Series, and we had an ARCA Menard Series East race this weekend. Sean Higurani took pole position, leading the first 102 laps before he got passed by an aggressive William Sawalich, and Higurani, you've got to say, wasn't too happy with how he was raced either. He was hardly livid in his post-race interview, but he did make it clear he didn't think the move by Sawalich was 100% clean. But Sawalich moved on. He never looked back, leading the final 48 laps to take the win in ARCA's return to Flat Rock Speedway. ARCA East is now halfway through the 2023 season. Its 4 remaining races will be combo events with the National ARCA Tour. And real quick, before we go into the end of the show here, how about Billy Venturini getting back behind the wheel of a car and finishing in a very strong 4th place on his return, his first ARCA race in 16 years. A great result for him.
That's huge. we were commending him last show about this, and it's great to see that top 5 result.
Yeah, and I'll have more on this in a NASCAR article coming in up in the next 24 to 48 hours or so. But I also want to give a shout out to Jeff Smith, the brother of Brad Smith. Jeff Smith had 1 ARCA start on his resume before this weekend. You want to talk about a throwback? It was back in 1987. He also finished last that day as well. I've got to imagine that is some sort of ARCA record, longest time between starts or between last place finishes before, but for sure. We'll see if we can get Brock and myself to fact check that for the article this week. But great to see him back out there as well, and the Brad Smith team continuing to do what they can with the limited resources that they have. A great championship battle, I think, shaping up here as well. Some bad blood may be forming between Sean Higurani and William Sawalich. We'll just have to wait and see. It's going to be interesting, the dynamic of having the main ARCA Tour out there to compete with now, as well as we get into the second half of the East Series season. But certainly no shortage of storylines to follow in ARCA East as we move forward. Well, thank you all so much for spending the last hour and a half or so with us. I apologize. I'm getting some messages that my internet may be dipping, so hopefully you all can still hear me loud and clear. Brandon, before we close out the show, what is your one shining moment from this weekend in motorsports?
I got to go with the rest of the crowd, man. I'm not just a bandwagon follower, but Bump Day has to take the cake. That was drama all the way to the end. And also just I was conflicted because you got Bump Day going on, you got North Wilkesboro going on. And it was just it's a great weekend, and next weekend's going to be even better. So it's all kind of taking my one shining moments. It's kind of the whole thing. It's hard to pick.
It is hard to pick, and I think it's
this time of year
going to be unanimous here. I've got to give a shout out to everybody at IMS, everybody at North Wilkesboro Speedway. Great show on both the IndyCar and NASCAR side of things as well. But I will say this individually, I think I should give my one shining moments to Jack Harvey and Kyle Larson. Jack Harvey, yes. I don't know where that pace came from. I think I, like everybody else, thought he was done, that they were just kind of going out for the heck of it.
I was like, what is he doing?
And my goodness, they certainly knew what they were doing on that last run and were able to bump their way into the field. I don't know if we brought up the time differential. I think I saw something today, but it was something like 44 10,000ths of a second across 10 miles. I mean, it was, you almost could not get closer than the 4-lap average between him and Graham Rahal. And again, it's heartbreak for Graham Rahal. You hate to see anybody miss the show, but that's what I love about Indy 500 qualifying. There are no guaranteed spots, and it creates dramatic moments like this.
Yeah. And on a quick note, when he was able to go back out to cool his engine, I didn't know you were allowed to do that. I mean, we don't have to talk about that too much. I didn't know that was even legal.
Yeah. Well, and that was, I think, why this is so shocking. Just what he did. I mean, if you were going to make one final run, I would have expected him to wait a little bit longer than he did and go out with the engine cooled as much as possible and as strong as possible, theoretically, to go out and make that last run. He made his last run, what we all thought was going to be his last run, with enough time to go back out and throw a Hail Mary at it. And he ends up bumping his teammate and his owner's son at that out of the Indianapolis 500. It's every year, I think Bump Day can't get more dramatic, or it can't equal what we've seen in the past. And it proves me wrong every time.
IMS Museum, if you haven't already done it, we need in the special wing where we do special themes, we need a Bump Day theme in the special wing. That would be fantastic. I'd love to go back and see that.
Absolutely. And some final comments from the chat here. Joe Samaniego, again, I think it's unanimous. North Wilkesboro, my shining moment. Trucks did run in North Wilkesboro before it closed, and I believe Harry Gant raced trucks there. Joe, I believe you're right. And Casey Campbell, I believe it was the first time that Jeff Smith ran an ARCA race in like 36 years. Doing the math quickly in my head, 1987. I think the math adds up. So, again, much more coming on that in a NASCAR article in the coming days here as well. As for right now, thank you all for sticking with us. Kind of a marathon wrap-up Encore combo show here coming up on, or exceeding now, just over an hour and a half. Thank you all for sticking with us.
We're a feature film now.
Sure, if you have enjoyed. Sorry, Brandon, what was that?
I said we're a feature film now.
There we go. If you enjoyed what you saw tonight, make sure you follow us on all of our social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn. Most importantly, right here on YouTube, help us hit 700 subscribers on our journey to 1,000 subscribers. A big weekend coming up for us with all the racing we've got going on. And again, much more on that here in just a moment as we preview our upcoming shows. But if you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take 5 minutes after our show, invest in our Patreon, join Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, and David in investing in Grid Network, helping keep us on the air throughout 2023. Our long-term goal of $500 per month will allow us to begin attending races on site on a more regular basis, expanding our coverage for our viewers. As I mentioned, Lord willing, I will be at Portland in just a couple of weekends with Joe Samaniego. If you want to see more coverage like that, make sure you support us here on Patreon, subscribe to us on YouTube, or if you'd rather make a one-time donation, there's the Buy Me a Coffee option in the description box below as well. You can buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Now, as I take a second to catch my breath here, let's preview the upcoming week. As I mentioned throughout the show, Kobe and Josh will be back on Wednesday to bring you Grid Tonight, covering all the on-track action in IMS, as well as some breaking news on the NASCAR and Supercar side of things with Project 91. Joe Samaniego will be back with the Women in Motorsports program on Friday with Daniel Zeri. And, of course, you can stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage this upcoming weekend. As always, don't miss a very special edition of Grid Live pre-race on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, previewing this weekend's 107th running of the Indianapolis 500. Certainly no shortage of storylines to talk about, and it's only Monday. I'm sure we're going to have more to talk about all throughout the week. So stay tuned to Grid Tonight. Women in Motorsports, much more, I'm sure, on Catherine Legg and what the fallout's going to be from her involvement in that crash as well, as she gets ready for the 500, her first 500 in 10 years. And don't miss that pre-race show on Sunday. It's going to be a good one. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off from this evening?
Monaco, Coke 600, 107th Indianapolis 500. Get ready.
It is the greatest weekend if you're a motorsports fan. 3 iconic races all happening on the same day. Certainly looking forward to a great day of racing this coming Sunday. For Brandon Crossland and Joshua Burch and Kobe Lambert, our special guest from Grid Tonight and the Podium Finish, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.